You have been reading it your whole life, standing in a grocery store aisle, bag of chips in one hand, label turned toward you, eyes scanning down the column of numbers. Calories, total fat, sodium, carbohydrates. You nod, you make a decision. You put it back or you put it in the cart. You feel informed, but here is the thing nobody tells you at the start. The nutrition label you just read was not built to inform you. It was built to survive a negotiation, a years-long battle between food scientists who wanted full transparency and a food industry that had billions of dollars of reasons to want something else. And the label that came out the other side of that fight was a compromise. And in every compromise, someone gives something up. In this case, what got given up was you. The nutrition label did not come from a health movement. It came from a scandal. In the late 1960s, a Senate committee led by Senator George McGovern began investigating the relationship between the American diet and the explosion of heart disease, obesity, and diabetes that was reshaping the country. The findings were stark. Americans were eating more processed food than any previous generation, and they had no way of knowing what was inside it. The food industry had been self-regulating for decades, which meant in practice they were not regulating at all. Salt and sugar levels in packaged foods were considered proprietary information. Ingredient lists were vague. Serving sizes were invented by marketing departments, not nutritionists. Congress pushed for mandatory disclosure. The food industry pushed back. Lobbyists arrived in Washington with studies funded by the very companies being investigated. Proposed regulations were weakened. Timelines were extended. And the Nutrition Labeling and Education Act that finally passed in 1990 was a significantly softer document than the one scientists had originally drafted. The label that appeared on American food packaging in 1994 was the result of that softened document, and it carried the compromises with it from the very first day. The first compromise was the serving size. Look at any nutrition label and find the serving size listed at the top. That number controls everything below it. Every calorie count, every gram of fat, every milligram of sodium. All of it is calculated per serving. Not per package, per serving. And serving sizes were not set by how much people actually eat. They were set by survey data from the 1970s and 1980s on how much people reported eating in a single sitting, which means they were already outdated when the label launched in 1994. And they were never updated to reflect how eating habits actually changed. A standard serving of cola on the original label was 8 ounces. A standard American soda bottle is 20 ounces. A person drinking that bottle is consuming 2.5 servings, according to the label, which means they are consuming 2.5 times the calories listed in the most visible number on the front of the can. Chips, cookies, ice cream, breakfast cereal. Across category after category, the serving size listed on the label was smaller than what a real person in a real kitchen was actually eating. Sometimes by a factor of 2, sometimes 3. This was not an accident. Smaller serving size means smaller numbers in the calorie column. Smaller numbers in the calorie column means the product looks healthier than it is. The math was straightforward. The incentive was obvious. And for 20 years, the FDA left those serving sizes in place. The second compromise was the daily value percentage. On the right side of every nutrition label, you see a column of percentages. 5% of your daily value of sodium, 30% of your daily value of vitamin D. These numbers are supposed to tell you how much of your daily requirement a single serving provides. But daily value percentages are calculated against a standard diet of 2,000 calories per day. That number was not chosen because 2,000 calories is the right amount for most people. It was chosen because it was a round number that sat in the middle of the range and made the math simple. A small man who needs 1,600 calories a day is eating 30% more sodium than his percentage column suggests. A large man burning 2,600 calories a day has more room than the label implies. The 2,000 calorie baseline is a fiction that applies accurately to almost nobody and approximately to everyone. There is also what the daily value column simply does not include. Added sugar had no daily value percentage on the original label at all. For over 20 years, a product could contain 40 grams of added sugar per serving, and the percentage column would show nothing. No number, no context, just a blank space where accountability should have been. The food industry fought the inclusion of added sugar percentages for years. The lobbying was extensive and well-funded, and for 2 decades it worked. What the label never shows you is a longer list than most people realize. It does not show you the glycemic index, how quickly the carbohydrates in the food spike your blood sugar. A food can have identical carbohydrate counts and wildly different glycemic responses, and the label gives you no way to distinguish between them. It does not show you the degree of processing. Ultra-processed foods engineered to override your satiety signals and keep you eating past the point of fullness look identical on a nutrition label to minimally processed whole foods with the same calorie count. The label measures ingredients. It does not measure what those ingredients were put through before they arrived in the package. It does not show you pesticide residue, hormone content, antibiotic presence in meat products. None of these are required disclosures under the current labeling framework. And the ingredient list, which sits below the nutrition facts panel, is organized by weight but has no requirement to flag the presence of additives that have been approved by the FDA under a category called generally recognized as safe. That category was created in 1958, and thousands of additives have been added to it since without the kind of independent safety testing that the name implies. In 2020, the FDA finally updated the nutrition label for the first time since 1994. Serving sizes were revised to reflect how people actually eat today. The 20-ounce soda bottle now lists its calories as a single serving rather than 2.5. Added sugars got their own line and their own daily value percentage. Vitamin D and potassium were added as required disclosures because deficiency in those nutrients had become a public health concern. Vitamins A and C were removed as required items because deficiency in those had become rare. It was a genuine improvement. Food scientists who had been pushing for the update for years acknowledged that. The added sugar disclosure alone was called one of the most significant public health labeling changes in decades. But the serving size update revealed something uncomfortable in the process. When manufacturers were required to list realistic serving sizes, the calorie counts on dozens of popular products effectively doubled on the label overnight. Not because the food changed, because the number finally reflected what people were actually eating. The food had always been that many calories. The label had just been doing the math in a way that made it easy not to notice. Here is what to actually look at when you pick up a package. Start with the serving size and immediately multiply everything by how much you are actually going to eat. That is your real number, not the one in the biggest font on the label. Look at added sugars, not total sugars. Total sugars includes naturally occurring sugars from fruit or dairy. Added sugars are what manufacturers put in on top of what nature already provided. That distinction matters. Look at the ingredient list and find where sugar appears. Ingredients are listed by weight from highest to lowest. If sugar or any of its 40+ alternative names appears in the first 3 ingredients, the product is built around sweetness, regardless of what the calorie count says. And look at how many ingredients there are total. This is not on the label as a number. You have to count. A product with 4 ingredients and a product with 40 ingredients can have identical nutrition panels. They are not the same thing. The label is a tool. It was always a partial tool built inside a political process that was never purely about your health. Understanding what it measures and what it was designed to leave out does not make it useless. It makes you the one in the grocery store aisle who actually knows what they are reading.